Good afternoon, and welcome to another Research in Action, brought to you by the Division of Research at Florida Atlantic University. My name is Karen Scapinato. I will be today's moderator. Before we get started, again, some reminders of the logistics. If you have a question for today's speaker, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you move your mouse around, and you will see a pop-up there, a Q&A button. If you click that, a pop-up will come up. Feel free to write a question at any time during today's presentation. We will get through the questions at the end of today's presentation. It is my very great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Nicole Baganz. Nicole will talk a little bit herself about how she got to where she is today, but she will talk about a very fascinating community outreach program that we have here at Florida Atlantic University as part of the Stiles-Nicholson Brain Institute. And with that, I'm turning it over to Nicole.
Thank you very much, Karen. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again, Karen, for the introduction. It is a pleasure to be here today. Again, I'm Nicole Baganz. I'm the Assistant Director of the FAU Stiles-Nicholson Brain Institute. I am also the Director of Community Engagement and Programming, and today I'm going to talk to you a bit about all of our community outreach programs. But before I go into our programs, I just wanted to give you a brief history as to how I came to have a position that was essentially created for me. This position as Community Engagement and Programming Director is relatively new in science academia. And right now, if you Google that title, you won't find a lot of people that have this particular position. However, it is gaining traction within academic institutions and especially in science. And I have no doubt that in the coming years, you'll see a lot more people out there with jobs like mine. So, like I said, very briefly, I grew up, I was born and raised in Wisconsin, up north, and I am a cheesehead. I also went to school at the University of Wisconsin, got my bachelor's degree in biology. But ever since I was walking, I was dancing. So I also started a dance company at my university. My love of the arts kind of blended with my science, and I ended up going to school further on. I got a master's degree in traditional Chinese medicine. I went to school in Chicago and studied acupuncture and herbal pharmacology for 4 years and did a clinical internship in the hospital at Guangzhou in China. I really enjoyed practicing medicine, but I found that I didn't quite understand how or why the medicine worked. So I had so many questions, I decided to go back to school, and I pursued a Ph.D. at the University of Texas in San Antonio in physiology with an emphasis in neuroscience. And I'm not going to belabor you with all of the intricacies of my dissertation research, so this will be your only slide on my science. I studied for both my graduate studies and my postdoctoral studies with Randy Blakely at Vanderbilt. I studied serotonin. And serotonin, I'm sure all of you have heard of in the media. It's very popular. It's considered the quote unquote happy chemical. I studied serotonin and specifically serotonin neurotransmission. So if we look at the brain here, I think all of you have heard about neurons. This figure depicts two neurons coming together. Neurons communicate with one another. And serotonin is the signal that one neuron sends to the other neuron to talk to it. So I'm going to just make this into a cartoon so I can draw some stuff on there. So here we're looking at this same thing in a diagram. So you have a presynaptic neuron, one neuron that talks to a postsynaptic neuron. And in between that, serotonin is the signal they use to communicate. So I studied this guy here. It's called a transporter protein. Think of it like a vacuum. So what its job is to, when serotonin is released by this neuron, serotonin is vacuumed back into this neuron by the serotonin transporter there. Now you can see better. And it's recycled so that it can be used to communicate again. It comes back in as recycled. So the serotonin transporter has become kind of famous in that it is also known to be the target of drugs like Prozac. Prozac is an SSRI category of drug, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And what Prozac and other drugs like Prozac do is they stop the vacuum, they shut off that transporter. So therefore, if serotonin is not being vacuumed and recycled back in here, the signal lasts longer outside and has more time to communicate to this neuron. So that's why antidepressants are thought to have their behavioral properties. During my postdoctoral studies, I looked at the immune system, which surprisingly also affects that same thing that Prozac affects, that transporter. And what it does is it makes the vacuum into a super vacuum. So it put it in high speed mode and it sucks out all the serotonin. So there's not much left to communicate. We also know that turning on the immune system reduces serotonin and has depressive-like effects on behavior. So that was, oopsies, excuse me. That was what I did for more than 10 years of my life, study serotonin. And again, during my PhD studies at San Antonio, I had some publications. This is the reward that we get as scientists as we're published. So I had some papers there. And also during my postdoctoral fellowship at Vanderbilt, which is in Nashville, Tennessee. So while I was doing my science, I did have a life outside of the lab. I did other things besides science when I could. And I lived in Music City. Nashville is considered Music City. So I was very active at my yoga studio. And my yoga friends asked me if I would do a talk about the power of yoga from the neck up. So I talked about yoga's beneficial effects on the brain. And it just so happened that at one of my yoga brain talks, I happened to have several prominent members of the music industry and musicians attend my talk. And I became known as the scientist who would speak at music conferences and music events. I spoke at the Americana Music Fest in Nashville. I was taken to LA to speak at the National Association of Music Makers show. And I went to a couple other events to represent scientists at these venues and at these conferences. And I ended up being one of the people to establish and coordinate the very first Music and Mind Symposium at Vanderbilt, which brought together musicians in the community with scientists at Vanderbilt to have a conversation about the arts, the meaning of the arts and the mind. It was very, very fun time. And all of this work ended up being highly recognized by the city of Nashville. Our work ended up being on the cover of one of our popular city magazines. And all this work I did in the community was recognized by the International Society for Neuroscience. I was given the Next Generation Award from this group, which is the largest body of neuroscientists internationally. And that award is given once per year for outstanding contributions in public outreach and neuroscience education. So around this time that I received this award, my postdoctoral mentor at the time, Randy Blakely, he said, Nicole, I am moving to Florida to establish a brand new brain institute at Florida Atlantic University. Would you like to join me? And I'll promote you to a research assistant professor, and I'm going to make you the director of community engagement and programming. So I came here. I'm very happy I did. I started doing research in the lab, and very slowly now our outreach endeavors have expanded so much so that that is now my full-time job, is to create and run our community programs. So we came to establish the Brain Institute here in where I am now in Jupiter, Florida. Although our headquarters, the Brain Institute headquarters is in Jupiter, we do have faculty throughout several FAU campuses, and we do have another office space on the Boca campus. Let's see. So we have several community programs listed on the left here, and I'll talk about these in a little bit more detail. But I do want to point out right here that all of these programs are 100% funded by community organizations and foundations. So these programs are only possible because of all of these generous folks and groups that I mentioned on the side here. There are others too. So let's start out with Brainy Days. Brainy Days is, and we hold in partnership with the generous support of Palm Health Foundation every year. This is a month-long celebration of neuroscience held in March. And we chose March because that's when National Brain Awareness week falls during that month. And we have events for both scientists and the community. This is a list of our community events from 2022. And we had speakers, outside speakers, and also internal speakers who covered a range of subjects from the complex and fascinating behavior of crows to Alzheimer's disease to long COVID. And typically these folks that we bring in from the outside, we have them do 2 talks. So one talk is for scientists. For example, this is Judith Grizel. She was one of our featured speakers this year. One talk's for scientists and one talk is for the public. So Judith is a neuroscientist who studies the neuroscience of addiction, and she also has a personal experience herself with addiction. She has a best-selling book called Never Enough about those experiences. And during her public talk, we give away 50 of the books to the first 50 students who attend the talk, and we have a book signing. Other events in the past, we try to cover a broad range of interesting subjects. We had one researcher who does fMRI, functional MRI imaging with dogs. So he puts a dog into a magnet and he'll watch what areas of the brain light up when they see a picture of their owner versus a stranger or a picture of food, things like that. We also had someone speak about the magic trickery and optical illusions, and is it a sleight of hand or a sleight of mind or both? We also have family-friendly events, and that one of those that's very popular is called Brain Blitz. We hold this at the Cox Science Center and Aquarium in West Palm Beach. That's our local science museum. This is a really fun day where we set up tables throughout the museum with neuroscience activities. And this day is entirely run by our neuroscientist volunteers. We call them NeuroSquad. NeuroSquad consists of a group of scientists and also science advocates who go out to community events, even like community walks, and like for NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and for Autism Speaks and others, just to show our support for our community programs. So we had this year at Brain Blitz, we had 35 of our scientists volunteer for this at 17 different activity tables. Here you can see one of our scientists with a young one, and what he's doing is he's got a little EEG cap on. It's measuring his brain electricity, and as he concentrates, this unit is called a Star Wars Force Trainer. It's actually it is literally measuring brain electricity. And what it does is it turns a motor in the base of this unit. Yoda starts talking to you, welcome young Padawan Jedi. And as you concentrate, that motor turns and it creates a wind tunnel in this tube, pushing this ping pong ball to the top. Here's another young one looking at different parts of the brain. So this is a really fun day that we have every March. The Cox Science Center, where we hold Brain Blitz, has been a partner of ours since the very beginning, since day one when Randy and I arrived in Florida. They are, we work on a lot of different things together, but one of the first things we worked on was their permanent journey through the human brain exhibit. Randy and I are the scientific advisors for this exhibit from its inception, which was a very fun process to be a part of. This Journey Through the Human Brain exhibit is 2,500 square feet, and it was $2.5 million to put together. It is permanent, and it has a bottom-up approach to neuroscience. So it has about 30 different installments that are interactive throughout the exhibit. One of them, a feature of it, is this large wall that's I describe it as a Google Earth for the brain. So you start at the top of the brain and you can zoom deeper and deeper and deeper and smaller through neuron networks down to the synapse like we saw before, and all the way to the cell membrane, which is depicted here. The Cox Science Center recently got a very generous gift, and they will be expanding. So in 2025, this is what the building is projected to look like, and the brain exhibit will be expanding along with it. So we're excited to be a part of that moving into the future. It was through the Cox Science Center that we were extremely fortunate to meet Mr. David Nicholson over here on the right with both Randy and me in this photo. Mr. Nicholson is a philanthropist. He is also just a generally an overall wonderful human being and a pleasure to work with. Mr. Nicholson has given extensively to the community here, especially to endeavors in education. He supports the Cox Science Center, and he gave us a $800,000 gift over 4 years to start a program called ASCEND, which is Advancing STEM Community Engagement through Neuroscience Discovery. This program has just been funded for 3 more years. And I want to also point out that Mr. Nicholson also gave us a $10 million gift towards our new research building in Jupiter, which I'll talk about more at the end of my presentation. So let's move forward. The reason, to start out with, this ASCEND program was designed to target middle school students. And the reason for that is because according to the United States report card, our students are really scoring poorly on STEM. 2 out of 3 middle schoolers score below proficiency in STEM. And that number is even lower in children who attend Title I schools. Also, it's around this age that kids lose interest in STEM. Only 60% of 9th graders do not want to pursue a career in STEM, and only 9% of middle school girls remain interested in STEM careers. So that's why we target this age group. The ASCEND program has evolved over the past 4 years into an umbrella program. And one of the spokes is Brain Sparks. Brain Sparks is very similar to what I described at Brain Blitz. It's a one-day event designed to spark kids to be interested in learning more about science and the brain. So we have activities for them. It's a short event, it's a short 3-hour event. And we encourage them to become part of our semester-long program, which is called Neuro Explorers. And Neuro Explorers is an after-school program. This is how the program is set up. You can see this is the flyer for the semester. It is every other week in person. The lessons build on each other. So it's the same set of kids that are together for each session in person. On the weeks in between in-person lessons, they do what's called Flipgrid assignments, and we post online activities for them. They can give us answers and have conversations with us in this closed online classroom forum. They receive a brain passport up here on the right. Each circle represents an activity they do throughout the semester. As they complete their activities, they receive a stamp, a brain stamp for each activity. If they collect all of their brain stamps, they receive a reward, which is this very cool LED changing color brain nightlight lamp. So I'm just going to share with you some of one example of a Flipgrid response that we get from one child. So one of the assignments recently was to online watch a lesson on brain areas and their function. And we asked the children to record a response. What did you learn? I'll just show you one example here.
Hello, it's me, your buddy the Brain. Today I'm going to talk about myself. I think the gyri and the sulci are important so that your brain fits in your skull. I think the hippocampus helps you learn and remember things. One interesting thing that I learned from this video is the pons and the medulla control your breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. That's it for me, your buddy the Brain. Goodbye. Hello.
So as you can see, it's just as much fun for us as scientists to see these kids, their creativity and how they're learning about the brain. So we really enjoy it too as teachers. This program clearly takes more than just me to run it. So we have a large team of team leaders. All of we've got 3 sub-teams that I'll talk about in a minute. But all of our teams consist of postdoctoral fellows and graduate students who are given a competitive fellowship. These fellowships are renewable annually. And I do want to point out that all of these folks, aside from me and the assistant director, David, only the 2 of us are full-time. Everyone else is full-time in the lab doing research. We do have other people that receive scholarships for our outreach program. We have undergraduates. This year it's Avi and Chris. And we have a Fun Fridays team too, who I'll talk about later on as well. Administration consists of myself and Dr. David Sonali. David is also the director of our MobileMinds program. That's our mobile outreach unit. And he is the first postdoctoral fellow in community engagement that I am aware of at this university. So he's got a pretty neat position himself. And we just posted that we are hiring. We're looking for an additional administrator for our outreach programs at the Brain Institute. So if you know of anyone who's looking for a postdoc and is interested in this type of work, please have them send me their CV. So talks and tours. This team, this is Paula and Claudia. This team is responsible for creating curriculum and going to the schools, being the teachers in person with the students. So you can see them here doing lessons in small groups. They're doing brain dissections here, teaching about EEG and doing some fly experiments with the kids. We do these small groups together as pilot studies so they can see what works with these smaller groups of kids and then take them to places like the Cox Science Center where they'll have lessons for hundreds of kids at a time. Then there's Media Mavens. This is our media group. They run all of our social media. They do a podcast called Brain Bites, and they do a webcast called How Does My Brain Work? And Sam does one called Lamb Bench Lessons. I'm not going to play the audio for this one, but you can see how she is very artistic and she'll draw out the lessons. This is actually a depiction of the one you saw earlier when I talked about serotonin. She's teaching about neurotransmitters and neurotransmission at the synapse. I want to give you one example of a TikTok that our Mavens put together that was pretty popular. This is that Star Wars Force trainer that I told you about. So this is just a snippet of fun stuff that the kids can watch on. So you really have to concentrate. I had to do this once on live TV and I could not get that ball to move. No, it eventually moved, but it really does take some concentration. They also put together commercials. During the pandemic, we could not do Brain Sparks in person. So to get kids interested to sign up for the semester-long program, they put together commercials.
The Neuro Explorers program was a really good program. I didn't know very much about the brain in the beginning, but they taught me so many different things.
I just want to point out that website, South Florida Science Center, is now the Cox Science Center, but it was formerly the South Florida Science Center. So yes, our Mavens and all of our teams are tremendously talented. The next team is Virtual Voyagers. These guys have a variety of their own talents too. We have large touchscreen table you can see in the bottom right here. They're museum grade touchscreen interactive tables. So they program different types of games. Here's a brain puzzle where you have to put the pieces together, and there are neurons, you can put neurons together and make circuits or networks. They have a bunch of different types of memory games, application where you can actually put slides into a microscope on these and look at the slide and write in a lab notebook. They're very creative with these touchscreen tables, and we can take these, they're mobile, so we can take these to schools too. They also, Yana put together this is a giant fruit fly neuron, and that is on a little virtual reality device, so the kids can look at the giant neuron in 3D. Their most recent project included a red box VR, and we're really excited about this. They have used scenario VR and also a 360-degree camera, and they worked with the e-learning lab at FAU. And they put together a virtual reality tour of a real science lab. So what happens is you put this virtual reality application on, you can meet, here's David in the foyer. He greets you and talks to you about what's going to happen. And then you have options. You can go to a Quan lab, you can go to a Blakely lab, you can see the whole area, and you can turn up and down, see the ceiling, the floor, the other side. And once you go into the lab, you go and see here on the bottom left, this is just one example. There are several stations to go to, but for some kids, this is their very first time in a lab. So some of this stuff is completely new to them. There's a gel, a pipette, a shaker, and you can click on these. And for example, let's say you click on gel. And one of our researchers, Rania, will come and talk to you, and she explains what a gel is, why scientists use it, and you can see a gel running. And we have that for things as simple as pipetting all the way to our Blaze microscope, which is a $500,000 microscope. And this is what our kit includes: 30 headsets. So we can take this to a classroom and do this together with an entire classroom of kids. This is another project that this semester is in the works that we would like to get going, maybe with this virtual reality group. This is what you're looking at is a mouse brain. This mouse brain is cleared, and we immunofluorescently labeled some of the neurons in yellow. So not all the neurons are labeled or the whole thing will be yellow, but some of them are labeled. And this technology is with the Blaze microscope, and you can actually turn the brain. This is half of a mouse brain. And we can see, we're going to dive deeper and actually get to see these neurons up close. Each yellow blob is one neuron. So we can see how they're distributed. We can see how they project through the brain. It's a very cool technology, and I think it would be fabulous to have this in a virtual reality format. To be continued on that. All of these resources that I've been describing that are put together by our teams are online. You can find them here at this website. If you just Google to FAU ASCEND virtual resources, you can find all our podcasts, video casts, things like that. In addition, we work with Palm Beach County STEM Council. We have a NEPRIS page. NEPRIS is a platform where educational institutions like us, also Cox Science Center has one of these, and so does Loggerhead, where you can have they call it industry chats. We've done a live lab tour that was recorded and lives on this website. When we've done a live brain dissection, teachers are notified that these sessions are happening. They can sign up, and for our lab tour, I think we had over 100 students in classrooms join us for that one when we did it live. It's a great resource for our county and beyond. So far, all of the things I've been describing to you are very Jupyter based. So we are interested in also using all these tools and activities and resources and taking them to areas that can't get to us, specifically to Title I schools in Palm Beach County. And that is the idea of MobileMinds. And thanks to the generous gift of a van from Mr. Nicholson and from the Cox Science Center, we were able to purchase a van and move this particular idea of a program forth. So this program is now up and running. David is the director of this program. Lillian and Corey are the fellows that help out with this and received a scholarship for this program. There's David with our MobileMinds van, and that's our new building that will be opening soon in the background. Yes, this program has been up and running since November. They have already reached over 600 students and educators and counting. So they're really, really doing a great job with this program. And this is a picture of all of our folks in action here. The one in the center here, I'd like to point out, this is at the Edna W. Runner Tutorial Center. This is in North Jupiter, excuse me. And the folks I mentioned earlier are part of the Fun Fridays program, get a scholarship specifically to participate in this program at the Runner Center. As you can see, the teachers have a great time too. And here we are, MobileMinds on the Move. That's at the Autism Speaks Walk. So you also can get involved. Come join us. We have a NeuroSquad activity coming up very soon, which is the NAMI Walk, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, that's coming up very quickly, November 5th. That will be in John Prince Park. Please feel free to join us or support us. Our website is here. So you're welcome to join us. If you join us, you get a free Brain NeuroSquad t-shirt. So I hope to see you out there. We have other events that happen throughout the semester, so we'll keep you posted. And we have a community website too through the Brain Institute. And here is our new building. This building again will be opening very soon. Our grand opening will be on January 19th at 10 a.m. That's our ribbon cutting. So I hope that you'll come out, celebrate, take some tours of our new facility, and meet us in person. So with that, I want to thank you very much. And I forgot to mention that all of our Neuro Explorers do graduate as junior neuroscientists. We've graduated over 150 junior neuroscientists. And this is just a small group of them that wanted a photo op with their certificates. So this is a fun day for everyone. But thank you very much for listening. And I would be very happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And just as a reminder, if you have a question for Dr. Baganz, please type it under the Q&A button in the bottom of your screen in the little pop-up there. Nicole, I found it particularly amazing, that image that you had with your Blaze microscope, and you can actually look into the brain, right, and actually see the neurons and the neural cells. Really, really fascinating. And and that's why we're doing research, because those kind of images will help with finding cures and finding treatments for any brain diseases, anything from Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and many other diseases that, have their origin in the brain and where we don't know that much about yet. So, images like that are very important, but even more important is your work in educating and starting the education early and getting the kids interested in that kind of work, and hopefully, contributing a little bit to moving them into and steering them into a career that, has interest in those kind of areas where, maybe some of them in the future will find a cure for Alzheimer's or for Parkinson's or any of the other diseases that are out there that we currently have some treatments, but not a cure, no perfect treatments for. So thank you very much. Okay, let me start with some of our attendee questions here. The first one here is, when will be Brainy Days in 2023? You mentioned early on your initiative of the Brainy Days and the seminar speakers. Do you have dates yet for 2023?
That's a great question. I meant to mention that. I'm glad you asked. Yes, we do have a plan for 2023. It will be the entire month of March. We're just solidifying our speakers, so I don't want to give away anything quite yet, but we will have a full program this coming March 2023.
Great, thank you. One thing that struck me as you were talking about all these different initiatives and all these different community outreach events that you're doing to schools, and then the MobileMinds van, is it possible to schedule birthday parties with you? I remember, some of the museums do that. Do you offer anything like that?
That's a wonderful question. I honestly have never had that request before, but I love it.
Maybe something for the future to think about.
Yes, that's a great idea.
All right. You mentioned how some of the community members can, come to your walk that it's coming up in November, and some other events that you're hosting. Is there any other way that community members can participate in your programs and maybe even assist as a volunteer?
Yeah, we do have high school volunteers for right now for our after school program, but there are sporadic events throughout the year where we do have volunteers, like at Brain Blitz for Brainy Days in March. We always need volunteers to help out with that. There are other random community events. Also, MobileMinds is sometimes David needs help at a specific school. If there are a lot of children there and some of our scientists aren't able to make it, he does take volunteers for that program as well. So I just recommend whoever's interested to reach out to me and or David and let us know what types of volunteering you'd be interested in, and we can see if what we have available. We're always open for having help.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That actually leads me to my next question here from a student, a biology science major here at FAU. And that student wants to know how students can get involved in this program and volunteer.
Yep, same way. Reach out to me and David. And there are opportunities for scholarships for students as well, depending on the level of how much you'd like to be involved. Typically, our scholarships, we require 8 hours of volunteering per month. We also have had people who need to fulfill volunteer hours, and we're willing to sign off for volunteer hours too, if that's what's required for a program too.
Excellent, very good. And many of our students are in programs where they require volunteer hours, this would be an awesome opportunity, I think, to participate in and do some really cool stuff. All right, a completely different question, Nicole. You mentioned early on your interest in serotonin research, and the question here is, what got you started and interested early on in your career on serotonin research?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. I was interested in mood disorders from very young, even before I went to school for Chinese medicine. I grew up with a sister who had mental health issues and was on psychiatric medications. So I found the brain fascinating from the time I was young growing up. I didn't necessarily ever know or imagine that I would have become a neuroscientist, but I always thought that was interesting. So when it came to the brain, that was just something I gravitated to for personal reasons.
Great. All right, there's a question if we're going to share the slides. So this presentation is being recorded, and the whole presentation will be available on our website. So you're able to watch the whole presentation later. Do you or anyone on your program interact and work with the school district of Palm Beach County? One of our other questions here.
Yes, actually, we do work with the school district of Palm Beach County. David Sinali is very involved in some of their councils, the STEM Education Council for Palm Beach County. We are on their platform. We work with them in their STEM Education NEPRIS platform. So we are involved with the county school district as well.
Excellent, very good. All right, Mr. Nicholson is congratulating you for your ASCEND program, but he's also wondering if you're planning on scaling the MobileMinds initiative to turn on more lights in students.
Yes, definitely. What we would like to do is one thought, I've actually been talking to some folks in Boca, and it would be neat to have a van, another unit, so to speak, if we could get a unit to sit on the Boca campus, and they could have a broader reach. So I think one idea for having that expansion of MobileMinds is to put some more units and people that are with people who are already in those spaces, because we only those of us who currently work with the program have limited availability and mobility, but if we have if we fill each van with the activities and we have folks on different campuses, that will greatly expand our reach.
Right. And one thing that we discussed as we're having the rehearsal of today's session was to actually put activities into the vans. Right now, the vans are driving around material, and that then has to be put out somewhere else. And if you can stock them with like a microscope, for example, we could actually expand the whole program, right? So that's another nice way how that could be scaled and expanded. So very interesting, very, very nice. Okay, so we have another student here who wants to know how she can get in touch with the serotonin research project.
That research is being done by folks in the Brain Institute. If she wants to look up Randy Blakely's lab, there are several serotonin researchers in there. If she wants to reach out to me with a specific question, she can still do that. I still know about serotonin research, even though I don't necessarily do it anymore. I could put her in touch with people who might be able to help in the research area.
Right, and I should mention to those who are students on here, we do have a software tool that's called Team Sparks, and you can also find some available research projects there. So contact me after the session today and we can get you in touch. All right, completely different topic again from one of our attendees here. Do younger brains and adult brains have any differences when it comes to treatment? Getting into the research part, yeah.
Yeah, it depends how young the brain, but we know that the brain takes at least 24 years that continues to develop over the first 24 years of life. So especially in younger years, the brain is very, very malleable. We call this plasticity. So that's why younger brains can learn a language much more easily than older, less plastic brains. So there is difference in learning. There's difference in what maturity level, so to speak, behaviorally, brains are different, and structurally a little bit with the neuronal plasticity. So yes, treatment would be different as well.
Probably not surprising, given that I wish sometimes I still had the brain of a younger person, or I could learn languages or something really quickly. So there's certainly changes that the brain undergoes with age. So, Nicole, what's next? What's next for your community outreach program?
I think next, broad scale, we go national and international. I think what we were just talking about, just to broaden our reach, I think with MobileMinds is the most logical first step that we can take, is to place those vans throughout other campuses at the university and other universities even, and to also expand the program to other schools, so that maybe up in Tallahassee, someone could run the ASCEND program with our help and direction, and where we just send them the information packets. We already have our curriculum. So then that way it could be sent to other schools, so that we wouldn't have to necessarily go to the schools, but we can give the resources necessary to run the program through a different set of
creating kits basically that can be sent out to other schools or community groups.
Precisely, yeah.
Excellent, very good. All right, that concludes all the questions that we had, Nicole. If any of our participants and attendees have any follow-up questions, feel free to contact Dr. Baganz or myself. I can always get you in touch with her. And we thank you for your attendance today. Congratulations on a fantastic program, Nicole. And I look forward to hearing where you're going from here.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who came to listen.
Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye, everyone.